Jamal had never really known what it felt like to have a real home. Since he was a little boy, life had been full of changes. Foster homes, group homes, and sometimes even sleeping at a friend's house when no other place was available. At 13, everything changed when he met Karen. Karen was different from the other foster parents he had stayed with. She was a kind woman in her early 40s, with soft eyes and a warm smile. She lived in a small, cozy house in a quiet neighborhood. Jamal didn't know much about her, only that she wanted to help kids who didn't have a family to call their own. When Karen came to pick him up from the foster center, Jamal felt nervous. He wasn't sure what to expect. At first, things were hard. Jamal was used to being on his own, and trusting someone new was difficult. He missed his old neighborhood, his friends, and sometimes even his old foster homes, even though none of them were perfect. Karen tried her best to make Jamal feel welcome. She cooked his favorite foods and asked about his day at school, but Jamal kept to himself. He wasn't used to people caring so much. Karen didn't give up. She understood that Jamal needed time. She knew that love wasn't just about words, but about showing up every day. Sometimes, when Jamal came home from school looking tired or upset, she didn't ask questions. She just sat with him quietly, giving him space to feel what he needed to feel. Slowly, things began to change. Jamal started to open up, telling Karen little things about his life. He talked about his favorite music and the basketball games he loved to watch. Karen listened carefully, even learning some of the songs he liked. She took him to basketball games on weekends, where Jamal's face would light up with excitement. Even though they were different in many ways, different skin colors, different backgrounds, different experiences, they found small moments where they connected. They laughed at silly jokes, shared quiet dinners, and watched movies together on Friday nights. Karen wasn't perfect, and sometimes she made mistakes, but Jamal began to trust that she wanted to be there for him. School was still hard for Jamal. Sometimes he felt like he didn't belong, like people saw him only as a foster kid. But Karen always told him he was smart and strong. She reminded him that this graduation would be a chance to show the world what he could do. Jamal wasn't sure if he believed her yet, but her words stayed with him. One night, Jamal looked at the photo Karen had placed on the kitchen fridge. It was from the day she first picked him up. The photo showed a nervous boy with big eyes and a quiet smile, standing next to a woman who looked hopeful and kind. Jamal thought about how far they had come since that day. Even though Jamal still had many questions about who he was and where he belonged, he couldn't deny that Karen had changed his life. She was the first person who had stayed. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. As graduation day approached, Karen grew more and more emotional. She bought Jamal a new suit, polished his shoes, and practiced proud smiles in the mirror. For her, this moment was about more than a ceremony. It was about hope, love, and the promise of a better future. Jamal wasn't sure what the day would bring. He still carried the weight of his past, but deep down, he hoped he could find a way to believe in himself, too. And so, with the day coming closer, two very different people prepared for a moment that might change everything. After Jamal moved in with Karen, the days were not always easy. Even though Karen tried hard to help him, Jamal sometimes felt frustrated and alone. It was not just because of moving to a new home, but because he felt like no one really understood him. He missed his old neighborhood, his friends, and the things that made him feel like himself. Being with Karen was different, and sometimes that difference made Jamal feel confused. Karen wanted to connect with Jamal, but she didn't always know how. Sometimes, she would try to talk about things Jamal didn't want to share yet. Other times, she made mistakes by saying the wrong thing or not understanding Jamal's feelings. This made Jamal feel like she didn't get him. He didn't say it out loud, but inside, he worried she could never understand what he had been through. At school, Jamal faced his own challenges. Teachers and students didn't always see the real him. Some only saw a foster kid or someone who was different. Jamal felt the weight of those judgments, and it made it hard for him to trust others. He kept his guard up, protecting himself from getting hurt again. Even though he worked hard and wanted to succeed, it was difficult to believe he truly belonged anywhere. Karen noticed these struggles, but didn't know how to fix them. She wanted to do more, but felt like she was walking on thin ice. She read books about being a foster parent and talked to others in support groups. She learned about the challenges kids like Jamal face, but still, she worried she was missing something important. One afternoon, Jamal came home from school looking upset. He dropped his backpack by the door and sat on the couch without saying a word. Karen sat down next to him, but didn't say anything at first. After a few minutes, she asked softly, "Do you want to talk about it?" Jamal shook his head and looked away. Karen didn't push. Instead, she just stayed close, letting him know she was there. Slowly, Jamal began to open up a little bit. He told her about a fight he had with some kids at school who didn't accept him. He talked about feeling like he didn't fit in anywhere. Karen listened carefully, her heart aching for the pain Jamal felt. She didn't try to fix everything with words. Instead, she said, "I'm sorry you had to go through that. You deserve to be treated with respect. I'm proud of you for being so strong." For the first time, Jamal felt that someone truly heard him. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Over the next weeks, small changes began. Jamal still had tough days, but he began to trust Karen more. They started sharing more moments together, playing basketball in the yard, watching movies, and even cooking meals. Karen also made an effort to learn about Jamal's culture and interests. She asked him to teach her about the music and food he loved. Jamal liked this and felt proud to share parts of himself that had been hidden for a long time. Even though they still had many things to work on, the bond between Jamal and Karen grew stronger. They were learning how to be a family, even if it didn't look like what Jamal imagined before. Through all the ups and downs, both Jamal and Karen hoped that this new home could be a place where trust and love could grow. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were willing to try. And with graduation day coming closer, both of them wondered what the future might hold, and if this moment could finally bring them closer together. As graduation day got closer, Jamal started thinking more about what it really meant. School had not always been easy for him. Some days were full of hard work and long hours, while others felt lonely and full of questions about the future. But now, after all the struggles, he was almost at the finish line. Karen was excited, but also nervous. She wanted everything to be perfect for Jamal's big day. She bought him a new suit and polished his shoes carefully. She practiced, smiling proudly in the mirror, imagining how she would feel when Jamal walked across the stage. For her, this graduation was more than just a ceremony. It was a sign of hope, a proof that Jamal had made it despite everything. Jamal, on the other hand, had mixed feelings. He wanted to feel proud, but he also felt unsure. He wasn't sure if he belonged there, wearing a suit and walking in front of so many people. Sometimes he still felt like a kid lost between two worlds, the life he had before and the one he was building now with Karen. A few days before the ceremony, Karen invited Jamal to dinner at her house. She cooked his favorite meal, hoping it would help him relax. They ate quietly at first, but then Karen asked, "How do you feel about graduation?" Jamal looked down at his plate. "I don't know," he said. "I guess I'm happy, but I'm also nervous. What if people don't think I belong?" Karen nodded slowly. "I understand. It's hard when you feel different. But this day is about you, about how much you have grown and what you have achieved. No matter what anyone thinks, you should be proud of yourself." Jamal looked at her for a moment and then said, "Thanks for believing in me. Sometimes it's hard to believe in myself." Karen smiled softly. "I'm here to remind you, even when it's hard to see it on your own." The night before graduation, Jamal couldn't sleep. He thought about his past, the homes he had lived in, the people who had come and gone, and the pain he had felt along the way. But he also thought about Karen. She was the first person who had stayed. She was the first person who hadn't given up on him. On the morning of the ceremony, Karen picked Jamal up and helped him get ready. She adjusted his tie and brushed his hair gently. Jamal looked at himself in the mirror. The suit felt strange but also important. It was a symbol of a new chapter. At the school gym, the room was filled with families, teachers, and students. The air buzzed with excitement and nerves. Jamal sat quietly, waiting for his name to be called. When it finally was, he stood up and walked across the stage. The lights were bright, and he could see Karen sitting in the crowd, her eyes shiny with tears. As Jamal reached the end of the stage, he took his diploma and turned toward the audience. For a moment, he felt a wave of pride. But then, looking at Karen, a question bubbled up inside him. a question he wasn't ready to say out loud yet. Graduation day was here. It was a moment of celebration, but also a moment full of feelings Jamal was still trying to understand. As Jamal walked off the stage, holding his diploma tightly, he glanced toward the crowd. He saw Karen sitting in the front row, tears rolling down her cheeks. She was smiling, proud and happy. But Jamal didn't feel the same pride inside. Instead, he felt something else: confusion, anger, and sadness mixed together. He had spent so many years feeling like he didn't belong anywhere. Even now, with Karen there, he wondered if she really understood him or his life. As they took pictures and shook hands, Jamal heard himself say quietly, "Why is she even here?" The words surprised him as much as they surprised Karen, who was standing just a few feet away. The question wasn't meant to hurt, but it did. Karen's smile faded for a moment, and she blinked back her tears. She wanted to say something, to explain how much she cared, but the words stuck in her throat. People around them noticed the tension. Some looked confused, wondering why Jamal would say that about the woman who had cared for him. Others didn't understand the complicated feelings between them. For Jamal, those feelings were tangled and deep, part anger, part fear, and part pain. After the ceremony, Jamal and Karen stayed for a while in the crowded gym. The noise and excitement felt overwhelming. Karen tried to reach out, but Jamal pulled back. "I'm not sure why you're here," Jamal said softly, still upset. "You don't really know me. You don't understand where I come from." Karen listened carefully. She didn't get angry or defensive. Instead, she nodded slowly and said, "You're right. I don't know everything about your life, but I want to learn. I want to be here because I care about you." Jamal looked away. He didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to push Karen away, to protect himself from getting hurt again. But another part of him remembered the quiet nights when Karen had just sat with him, letting him feel what he needed to feel. He thought about all the times she had been there, even when things were hard. She hadn't left like some others did. And even though she didn't have all the answers, she had tried. "I don't know if I belong here," Jamal admitted. "Sometimes it feels like I'm stuck between two worlds." Karen smiled gently. "That's okay. Belonging doesn't happen all at once. It takes time, and it's okay to feel lost sometimes." For a moment, they just stood there, both unsure what to say next. The loud gym faded around them, and for the first time, Jamal felt a small space open between them, a space where they could be honest, even if it was messy. Later, when they left the school, Karen's eyes were still wet with tears, but there was a quiet strength in her voice when she said, "I'm proud of you, Jamal. No matter what you say or feel, I'm proud." Jamal didn't answer right away. Inside, he was still confused and hurting. But somehow, hearing those words made him feel a little less alone. That night, as Jamal lay in bed, he thought about the day, the diploma, the crowd, and Karen's tears. He realized that their story was not simple. It was full of hard questions and feelings that didn't have easy answers. But maybe, he thought, that was what family sometimes looked like. Two people trying to understand each other, even when it was hard. And with that thought, Jamal slowly closed his eyes, ready to face whatever came next. After the graduation, the silence between Jamal and Karen lasted longer than either expected. They were both thinking about what had happened. The words Jamal said, the tears Karen hid behind, and the feelings neither of them fully understood. Karen spent that evening sitting in her living room, staring at the empty chair where Jamal usually Saturday. She thought about all the times she had tried to show love in her own way. She knew she wasn't perfect, but she had never given up on him. The question Jamal asked kept ringing in her mind. Why was she even there? She wondered if Jamal felt she was just a stranger in his life. She wanted to be more than that. She wanted to be someone who made a difference, someone who made him feel safe and cared for. But she also knew that love wasn't easy. It wasn't always about hugs or smiles. Sometimes it was about patience and quiet support. Jamal, meanwhile, was fighting his own battle inside. After saying those words, he felt a mix of regret and relief. He didn't mean to hurt Karen, but he couldn't stop his feelings from coming out. He still felt angry about the past, the places he had lived, the people who left, and the parts of himself he was still trying to understand. Sometimes he thought about his friend from his old neighborhood. They didn't have to explain their feelings or question if they belonged. Jamal wished he could feel that simple sense of belonging again. But with Karen, things were different. She wasn't like anyone he had known before. Sometimes that scared him. Days passed without much talking between them. The house felt quieter than usual. Karen didn't want to push Jamal too hard, but she also didn't want to lose the chance to heal what had been broken. She decided to write him a letter, something she hoped would reach him even if words were hard to say face to face. In the letter, Karen wrote about her hope for Jamal's future. She told him how proud she was of everything he had done, even on the days when he didn't believe in himself. She said she understood that their relationship wasn't perfect, but promised she would keep trying to be there for him no matter what. When Jamal found the letter, he didn't know what to do at first. He read it again and again, feeling a little less alone with each word. The letter didn't fix everything, but it opened a small door between them. One afternoon, Jamal sat down next to Karen in the living room. He didn't say much at first. Instead, he handed her the letter back and said quietly, "Thank you." Karen smiled and reached out to hold his hand. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild trust and understanding. They both knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more hard conversations, moments of doubt, and times when things didn't go as planned. But for now, they were willing to try. Sometimes, love is not about perfect moments or easy answers. It is about showing up, even when it's difficult, and choosing to stay. And in that quiet living room, Jamal and Karen took a small but important step toward a future where they might finally feel like family. After that quiet moment in the living room, Jamal and Karen started to talk more. Not about big things right away, but about small stuff, the kind of things that help people understand each other better. Sometimes they talked about music Jamal liked or movies Karen wanted to watch. Sometimes they shared stories from their day. Jamal still had days when he felt unsure about everything, but he began to see that Karen really cared. She didn't try to change who he was or tell him how to feel. Instead, she listened. That made a difference. One afternoon, Jamal asked Karen to play basketball with him. They went to the park nearby, and even though Karen wasn't very good, they laughed and had fun. Jamal felt free in those moments, not worried about fitting in or being judged. He just enjoyed the game and the company. Karen asked Jamal to teach her some of the moves he liked. He showed her how to dribble and shoot, and she tried her best to keep up. For a while, it wasn't about foster homes or hard words. It was just two people spending time together. Jamal also started to share more about his life before Karen. He talked about his old neighborhood, his favorite places, and some of the challenges he faced. Karen didn't pretend to understand everything, but she asked questions and showed interest. Jamal liked that. He felt a little more seen. At school, things were still not easy. Jamal still felt different from many of the other students. Sometimes, he heard whispers or saw looks that made him uncomfortable. But now, when those feelings came, he remembered that Karen believed in him. That gave him strength. One day, Jamal came home excited. He had been invited to join a group at school that focused on helping students with their future plans. It was a chance to meet new people and learn skills. Jamal wasn't sure if he wanted to try, but Karen encouraged him gently. "You don't have to decide now," she said. "Just think about it. I believe in you." Jamal thought about those words all night. It was hard to believe sometimes, but Karen's support made him want to try. Slowly, Jamal's world began to open a little more. He started talking to some of the kids in the group. He found people who understood parts of his story. For the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe there was a place for him outside of just school and foster care. Karen watched all this quietly, feeling proud but trying not to overwhelm Jamal. She knew trust took time. She wanted him to find his own path, but promised she would always be there to catch him if he fell. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun go down, Jamal said, "Thanks for not giving up on me." Karen smiled and squeezed his hand. "I'll never give up on you, no matter what." They didn't have all the answers, and their journey was far from over. But in that moment, something important had shifted. Two people from different worlds were learning how to be a family, step by step, and that was enough to keep them going. Over the next few months, Jamal and Karen's life slowly began to feel more like a real family. It wasn't perfect, and there were still hard days, but they learned to lean on each other in new ways. Their bond grew stronger because they kept trying, even when things were difficult. One afternoon, Jamal came home with a big smile. At school, he had finished a project about his future dreams. He shared it with Karen, who listened carefully. Jamal talked about wanting to be someone who helped kids like him, kids who felt lost or alone. Karen felt tears come to her eyes, proud of how much Jamal had grown. "That's a powerful dream," she said softly. "I believe you can do it." Jamal looked at her, feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while. School was still a challenge, but Jamal found a few friends who accepted him for who he was. He started to join clubs and activities, finding places where he could belong. Karen cheered him on, attending his basketball games and school events whenever she could. Sometimes, Jamal's past would still catch up with him. There were moments when he felt sad or angry about the things he had been through. But now he had someone to talk to. Karen never judged or rushed him. She simply listened and held space for his feelings. One evening, Jamal invited Karen to join him at a community event. It was a celebration for foster families with music, food, and games. At first, Karen felt nervous. She wondered if she really fit in that world or if she was still an outsider. But as they walked around together, she saw how proud Jamal was to show her off. He introduced her to people who had helped him along the way. He smiled more freely than she had seen in a long time. Karen realized that this moment wasn't just about Jamal. It was about them, their journey, their struggles, and their hope for the future. Later that night, Jamal and Karen sat on the porch, watching the stars come out. Jamal said quietly, "I never thought I'd feel this close to anyone." Karen smiled and replied, "Me neither, but I'm glad we found each other." They talked for a long time, sharing dreams and fears. It was one of the first times Jamal felt safe enough to imagine a future where he belonged. Weeks turned into months, and their home grew warmer with laughter, music, and love. Karen learned to be patient with Jamal's ups and downs. Jamal learned to trust Karen's steady presence. Their story was still unfolding, full of surprises and challenges. But through it all, they had each other. And sometimes, that was all that mattered. Together, Jamal and Karen were building more than a home. They were building a family, one step, one day, and one moment at a time. As time passed, Jamal and Karen grew closer in ways neither expected. They had faced many hard moments, but now they were finding joy in the small things. Their home was filled with laughter, quiet talks, and shared dreams. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One day, Jamal received a letter from a college he had applied to. His heart raced as he opened it. He had been accepted. The news was both exciting and scary. College meant a new chapter, new challenges, and new opportunities. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew Karen would be there to support him. Karen was proud, but also a little emotional. She remembered the day Jamal first came to her house, scared, unsure, and full of questions. Now, he was preparing to take a big step toward his future. She told him, "You've worked so hard. I know you can do this." Jamal smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "Thank you for believing in me." As Jamal packed his bags, Karen helped him organize everything. They talked about his plans and hopes. Jamal shared his dream of studying social work, wanting to help kids who had been through what he had. Karen listened, proud and hopeful. On the day Jamal left for college, Karen stood by the car, waving goodbye. Jamal looked back and saw her tears. He felt a deep warmth in his heart, a mix of sadness and love. He knew this was just another step in their journey together. At college, Jamal faced new challenges. Classes were harder, and the city felt different. But he remembered Karen's encouragement and the strength he had built. He made new friends and joined clubs that helped him grow. He even volunteered at a local foster care center, sharing his story to inspire others. Back home, Karen missed Jamal, but kept busy with her work and community. She felt proud knowing he was chasing his dreams. They stayed in touch with calls and messages, sharing their daily lives. One weekend, Jamal came home for a visit. They spent the day cooking, laughing, and talking late into the night. Jamal shared stories about college, his friends, and his plans for the future. Karen told him about her own hopes and the people she had met. Their bond had grown stronger, built on trust, love, and understanding. They were no longer just foster mom and kid. They were family. As Jamal prepared to return to college, he said, "Thank you for never giving up on me. I wouldn't be here without you." Karen smiled, tears in her eyes. "And I'll never stop believing in you. You're capable of amazing things." Their story showed that family is not just about where you come from, but about the love and support you give and receive. Through patience, courage, and hope, Jamal and Karen found a way to heal and grow together. And no matter where life took them, they knew they would always have each other.